Welcome back, everybody. This Week in America website, very simple, thisweekinamerica.us. Back with us on the program, an old friend, a retired general surgeon, Dr. Frank Elbert Davis III. He received his AB in chemistry and MD in medicine from UNC Chapel Hill. He's a retired member of the American College of Surgeons, the Southeastern Surgical Association, and the American Association for Surgery of Trauma. He was inspired to write several books: What's Your Analysis, Diagnosis, Truth or Fantasy? An Essay on Human Perception. And a book we'll be talking about some today, The Nature of Science Today, Denial of the Truth Forms as Reality. Information on these books available at the doctor's website, which is unifiedfieldequation.com. And you can get there directly by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Dr. Davis, always a pleasure. Always learn something when you're on the program. Great to have you back with us. Looking forward to our conversation today.
Great to be with you, Rick.
I mentioned a couple of books, and I know you've got some exciting news on both of the books. Getting great reviews out there, and a lot of exciting things happen. What's the latest on the two books?
Well, both books will be presented at the London Book Fair, which is the world's center of publication, London, in April of next year, April 2015. The book, What's Your Analyst, Diagnosis, Truth or Fantasy? An Essay on Human Perception, is being marketed in the future as a nonfiction movie. And the website, unifiedfieldequation.com, has the videos of both of our previous interviews on it at unifiedfieldequation.com.
And again, you can go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and link on directly to Dr. Davis's website, which is unifiedfieldequation.com. And watch the other two interviews that we've done, and some exciting news, and I'm hearing it for the first time, and congratulations. Exciting news since we talked the last time on both of the books. The books are fascinating. They will get you thinking. They're very thought-provoking. Why did you decide to write the two books? Why did you decide, this has been kicking around for a while. I want to sit down and explore these issues. Why the timing on that?
Well, the motive or the angle for writing these books has to do with denial of the publication of what I call their discoveries by the people who are supposed to know the answers or solutions to these problems posed by Sigmund Freud and Albert Einstein. As a matter of fact, both of these problems were posed by these great men of science and academia in the year 1905, and there's no generally accepted solution for either of these problems even today. In the case of the structural development of personality, most intelligent and wary people say that most people who are in the know about personality's development believe that it is some relationship between the environment and the genetic person. On the other hand, if you look at the consciousness of this, the people that are supposed to know it unconsciously believe that personality is genetic. But because it's unconscious that they believe that, and they say that they believe it's some relationship between the environment and genetics, it's difficult to trap them or to show that they are exhibiting duplicity. And it's only by showing that their unconscious is where they hold this firm belief that personality is caused by genetics that you are able to fix them in one place or the other.
Right.
And then be critical of the way they think. Of course, when you try to do that, they want to deny that they think that way, but you can show that they think that way in their writings. Now, what have these two books done? If you start out with the first book, What's Your Analyst Diagnosis? Truth or Fantasy, an essay on human perception, you might come to recognize that it solves the problem, both these problems, the structural development of personality and the unified field theory with its equation, by using psychoanalysis, that is, free word association. Sigmund Freud said that there were at least two ways to identify or reveal the unconscious mind. One was by free word association, and the other that he gave us was hypnosis. And of course, the psychoanalysts generally use free word association, or at least that's the way they describe their technique. Thomas Kuhn, who wrote the book The Structure of Scientific Revolutions, said that in order to have a scientific revolution where you go from a situation where you have duplicity, or what Wikipedia would call ambiguation, the way you go from that duplicity to disambiguation is that people with two different views, in my case, the view of the environment as the cause of the personality, and in the psychoanalyst view, the idea of endogenous causation, the way you get from that conflict to an advancement in science is that both of these sides or points of view present their arguments to the public, and the public makes demands upon the two sides that cause the decision between the 2 points of view to come to a head. And once one of them, like the thesis or the antithesis, is reached as a consensus, then you have real science. But according to Hegel, if you have both the thesis that personality is endogenous and the antithesis that personality is some relationship between the genetic person and his environment, what Hegel says you have then is nothingness. So what the purpose of my books is to try to force the public to get involved in these two problems for their solution so that science can then advance.
The books are fascinating to read, and our guest on the program, and I'll give you all the information, is Dr. Frank Davis III. The books we're talking about are two that he has written: What's Your Analysis, Diagnosis, Truth or Fantasy, an Essay on Human Perception, and The Nature of Science Today, Denial of the Truth Forms as Reality. Information on both and past programs that the two of us have done at his website, unifiedfieldequation.com. Are we getting any closer to having a sort of a unified perception, a unified voice on this?
Well, if there is any unity among the people that are supposed to know this, it is that personality is endogenous or genetic. However, I show in my books that this is a result of the fantasy world of endogenous brilliance for these scientists. And I actually reveal their unconscious belief that personality is endogenous or genetic, where they deny it when they're in an argument about what causes personality. They always hedge and say that it is due to some, and they would add in parentheses, as yet unknown relationship between the genetic person and the environment. But what I'm trying to say to them is, if Freud were not equivocal or ambiguated in his writings, you would know that the cause of personality is the superego structure or the parental structure in the mind of the person, so that the superego has custody and control of the genetic person. So if you look for the root cause of personality, it is the environment. Now, these things are obvious in some cases. For example, why do the Arabs hate the Jews? Does it come from their genetics? Well, of course, Arabs are genetically one thing and Jews are genetically another, but the hatred comes from the parental direction in those directions of hate. It doesn't come from their genetic lack of relationship.
Yes.
See, my first book says, what's your analyst diagnosis, truth or fantasy? An essay on human perception. What you should recognize is that the reason black people in this country and white people in this country, in a global view police officers differently because of their environmental direction to see the police in different ways. So that it's not a hereditary thing of black skin or white skin. It is the way their parents teach them to relate to the police.
That makes so much sense. The examples that you're using, why is that difficult for some scientists to understand that or to agree with that?
Well, of course, I go into this in great detail in my books, but the simple answer to that question is, if you accept the idea of the superego structure, and if you accept as the parental representative in the mind of the child who then becomes an adult, and if you accept Otto Kernberg's idea that the cause of the narcissistic personality disorder is that of a chronically cold, narcissistic, but at the same time overprotective mother figure, you see in both cases we are looking to the mother or child custodian as the cause of personality, even in, and especially in the case of narcissistic personalities. Well, then, if you recognize the fantasy worlds of the narcissistic personalities as being their superego structure, then you recognize that if they're in the fantasy world of unlimited brilliance endogenously or genetically for themselves, this is the cause of the reason why psychoanalysts who have generally got that disorder, or they wouldn't be in that field, because that is the psychoanalytic paradigm, according to Dr. Robert Michaels, the immediate past associate editor-in-chief of the International Journal of Psychoanalysis. You see, they won't accept you into their clique or their profession unless you agree with them, at least subconsciously, that the personality is one of unlimited endogenous brilliance. Well, then if somebody tries to publish a specific cause for the narcissistic personality as the environmental superego structure, their paradigm denies that as the solution to the problem. So then you wind up with this challenge of Freud from 1905 that has not yet been solved because they will not accept the superego structure as the reason for personality, even though Freud himself wrote about it that way.
You know, it's interesting, and we've got a few minutes left in the program. The books have been very successful, as we mentioned. I'll give you both books on the website here in a second. What have the books done? What kind of response are you getting from the people you talk about, some of the scientists that you talk about in the books that have failed us? Is it opening a dialogue?
They refuse to publish my work. they refuse to recognize it as having significance. And in fact, in the case of Glenn Gabbard, he has written on the internet that his favorite way of insulting someone is to say that what you have written or what you have presented to me for publication is not up to our usual standard and is not psychoanalysis. Well, if the suggestion that the superego is the cause of personality and that the fantasy worlds of the narcissistic personalities are the superego structures in those personalities, if that is not psychoanalysis, I would challenge Glenn Gabbard to tell me what psychoanalysis is, especially when I reveal to him his unconscious mind in Freud's psychoanalysis of free word association. So their response to me as scientists is one of ignoring me. You know, what's said that they usually do when a threat to a scientist comes up is they ignore until they can't ignore it anymore because the public is making demands of them that they resolve this issue. And then when those demands are made, they attack you with hate and scorn, and they seem to have extremely hateful personalities. For example, I was invited to the editors' meeting of the International Journal of Psychoanalysis by Dr. Robert Michaels, and I spent the money to have a hotel room up there and the transportation to fly up there to go to that meeting, thinking that my work might finally be recognized. They invited me up there to ignore me. They invited me up there to scorn me and shun me and act ugly to me. And this was their reaction to my works. And it was intentional and it was hateful. It was perceived as hateful. And this is the kind of thing that a young lady that worked for the New Yorker wrote about in her article about psychoanalysts, the impossible profession, where Dr. Michaels denied that that ever went on in psychoanalysis, that they didn't have such things as insulting lines that they gave to people that they wanted to scorn or shun.
Right.
But, you know, if you record their actions, you see that that's exactly what they are and what they do. That's their behavior. Their behavior is that of narcissistic personalities with a fantasy of unlimited self-brilliance, where they deny any significant findings that could be added to psychoanalysis and other sciences, because many scientists have this disorder. They deny significant findings because to accept them would be to deny their core personality, their feeling of endogenous self-brilliance. And that is their state of consciousness.
Well,
their unconscious state is not knowing.
Yes. You know, the books are so well thought out. They're very well sourced. Everything is there. You can find out for yourself very simply by looking into the books. And I'll give you the names of these, the website where the information is available, actually, several websites. One book and our guest in the program has been Dr. Frank Davis III. One book is called What's Your Analysis, Diagnosis, Truth or Fantasy, an Essay on Human Perception. And the book, The Nature of Science Today, Denial of the Truth Forms as Reality. The doctor's website is unifiedfieldequation.com. You can see our past interviews there, the video you can watch and listen to the doctor explain his two books, unifiedfieldequation.com. And if you're driving and can't remember all of that, very simple, just go to thisweekinamerica.us and you can link on directly to the website, unifiedfieldequation.com. Dr. Time always goes by too quickly. Thank you so much for being with us once again. A fascinating program. Congratulations on the success of the two books. I mean, word is getting out there, despite the fact that some people would rather you not get the word out there. The word is getting out there. Thank you for being with us on the program again. It's always a pleasure to have you with us.
Good to be with you, Rick.
And again, the website is unifiedfieldequation.com. Our guest in the program, Dr. Frank Elbert Davis III. You're listening to This Week in America. Information available, of course, at our website, thisweekinamerica.us.